In the quiet village of Colombey-les-Deux-Églises, a very tall man named Charles lived a peaceful life. He spent his days walking through the woods and writing in his study. To the world, he was a retired hero from the Great War, a man who had once saved his country's soul. But while Charles enjoyed the silence of the countryside, he often looked toward the horizon, wondering if his country would ever need him again. Back in the bright lights of Paris, things were not peaceful at all. The government was like a ship with too many captains and no one at the wheel. Leaders changed so often that the people could hardly remember their names. A young clerk named René worked in the heart of the city, watching the chaos with a heavy heart. "We need a foundation," René sighed, looking at the crumbling stone walls of the old assembly. Trouble was brewing far across the sea in a place called Algeria. People were angry, and the soldiers didn't know who to listen to. The news reached Charles on his small radio. He sat in his favorite armchair, listening to the static-filled voices. He knew that a storm was coming, and he knew that France was not ready to face it without a strong hand to guide the way. One afternoon, a car drove up the long driveway to Charles's house. Out stepped René, carrying a message from the leaders in Paris. They were desperate. They realized that only one man had the respect of the soldiers and the trust of the people. René handed Charles the letter. "The Republic is shaking," René said quietly. "Will you come back and help us build something stronger?" Charles agreed, but on one condition. He wouldn't just be another captain on a sinking ship. He wanted to build a brand new ship. He traveled to Paris, and when he arrived, the streets were filled with people. He stood before them, his long arms reaching out as if to embrace the whole nation. "I have heard you," he told the cheering crowds. "Now, let us get to work." Charles told René that the old rules were broken. They needed a new constitution, a set of rules that would make the president a leader, not just a figurehead. René gathered the finest pens and the heaviest paper. He felt the weight of history in his hands. "This will be the Fifth Republic," René whispered as he prepared the workspace for the great task ahead. For weeks, Charles and René worked late into the night. Charles paced the floor, dictating his vision for a strong France. He wanted a country that was proud and independent. René wrote down every word, organizing the ideas into laws. They studied maps and old books, making sure the new government would be fair but firm. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows of the tall man against the walls. When the new rules were finished, it was time for the people to decide. A giant vote, called a referendum, was held all across the country. René stood in line at a local school, watching his neighbors cast their ballots. When the results came in, the answer was a thunderous yes. The people wanted the change Charles had promised. They wanted a new beginning. Now that the new rules were in place, France needed its first president of the Fifth Republic. On a cold December day, the electors gathered. Charles stood in front of a mirror, straightening his tie. He wasn't just a general anymore. He was a statesman. He felt the responsibility of millions of people resting on his shoulders, and for the first time in years, he felt truly ready. In January 1959, Charles was officially inaugurated as president. René stood in the crowd at the Élysée Palace, watching as the ceremonial sash was presented. The tall man from the quiet village was now the leader of a transformed nation. As the trumpets sounded, Charles looked out at France, knowing that the ship was finally steady and the horizon was bright once more.